Well, welcome back to Smells Like Smoke Season 2, and there is a lot that has happened since the last episode of our last season. So I want to let you in, my audience, here on a little sneak peek. We've already dropped this and announced this in social media. I did an Instagram Live about this, but because of you, because of this audience, and because of literally 28 years of me mulling over the book of Jude, especially Jude 23, that says, rescue others by snatching them from the flames of judgment. This podcast is all about snatching people from hell to hope. That's the goal. How do we get people out of hell and into hope? Well, because of that, about a year ago, I started working on the book, Smells Like Smoke. And if you've been around, we actually got a publisher that picked up the book. And now we are in the month that the pre-release of the book is going to happen. So this audience right here, you will be the first ones that will get that link when it drops. And I'm going to ask humbly if you've found any value in this podcast, you found any value in the ministry that we've been a part of here at Pantano and beyond. I would love and be humbled if you would pre-order a copy of that book, maybe even share it with somebody else, or maybe even buy a couple copies to give out. I really believe this book can help people get on a rescue mission to snatch people out of hell. Well, with that said, season 2 is here. And let me start by saying something that actually might surprise you. Okay, I'm going to surprise you right out of the gate, season 2, and it's about doubt. Doubt in your life is not the enemy. In fact, silence is not the enemy, and questions are not the enemy. Uncertainty in your life, still not the enemy. The enemy is pretending. Pretending we have it all figured out. That's the enemy, is being a pretender. Like pretending questions mean weakness. Like they don't, but we pretend they do. Or pretending that faith is fragile. Here's what I'd say. If you want to rescue people, you have to understand this truth. Doubt is often the doorway, not the destination. Let me say that again. Doubt is often the doorway. It is not the destination. In fact, doubt could be the doorway to lead you to better answers about who Jesus is. And how you respond to doubt determines whether people move closer to Jesus or they move further away to Jesus. So why does this matter? Well, this matters because we live in a culture full of questions. Questions about faith, questions about suffering, questions about the hypocrisy. That's one of my favorites. I have people all the time. If you were here at Pantano when we kicked off this series, Smells Like Smoke, this last week, people will say all the time, well, I don't go to church because it's full of hypocrites. And I'm like, oh, well, you'll fit right in because you're a hypocrite too. We are all hypocrites. Questions about God. Like I have questions about God and I'm a pastor. And many people have learned like a really dangerous lesson. And here's the dangerous lesson. Church has not always been a safe place to have doubts. So here's what happens. They stop asking their questions. They stop sharing what they're going through. They stop trusting that they can have those conversations, not because they stop believing. I know some of you just started singing Don't Stop Believing, but because they felt judged for their questions. So if we want to smell like smoke, we've got to get close enough to doubt without flinching. Doubt is not a negative. Doubt can actually lead us through the doorway. So let me talk to men for a minute. And I know, ladies, every time I say that on this podcast, you're like, but we listen too. I know you do, and I'm really glad you do. In fact, all these principles apply across the board. But if you remember, this podcast was actually birthed out of a desire to help men actually be better at what we've not been so good at, and that's our faith. So men, here's what I know. You often struggle with doubt differently. And here's why. Because most men I know, we like answers, we like certainty, we like clarity. So when doubt shows up, here's what it does to a man's heart. We feel exposed. Like we think, I should know this. I should be stronger than this. I shouldn't be asking these questions. So here's what we do. We hide it, or even more so, we attack it in others. But here's what you need to understand. Unresolved doubt does not disappear. It just goes underground. Let me say that again so you don't miss that. Your unresolved doubt does not disappear, but it does go underground. And underground doubt eventually becomes distance. So how did Jesus treat doubters? I think we always have to start with, how did Jesus do this? So let's just dive into Jesus for a minute. Like Jesus, if you look through all of Scripture, those that doubted, he never shamed a doubter. He never mocked their questions. He never demanded blind belief. How do we know? Think about Thomas. He's been labeled Doubting Thomas. How would you like that for all of eternity to be known as the doubter? Which is interesting because we all doubt. But Thomas doubted. He questioned. He wanted evidence that Jesus was actually resurrected. And Jesus didn't reject him. You know what Jesus did? He invited him closer. In his doubt, Jesus said, come closer. He looked at Thomas. He said, come and see. Like, touch the wounds. Ask the questions. See, Jesus met doubt with presence, not pressure. That matters. That matters deeply with how we deal with doubt versus unbelief. So we need to make a distinction there. Doubt is not unbelief. Let me say that again. Your doubt is not unbelief. Doubt says, I want to believe, but I'm struggling. Unbelief says, I've decided not to believe. Here's what I really know is doubt is pretty honest. Unbelief is pretty settled. Most people are not rejecting God. They're wrestling with what they don't understand. And wrestling is not rebellion. Wrestling is not rebellion. It's actually engagement. If you're wrestling with God, you're actually engaging with God. So why do we get this so wrong sometimes? Here's why Christians often mishandle doubt is because we're afraid. If we're honest as Christians, we're afraid. If you're a non-Christian, just understand, most Christians mishandle doubt because they're afraid. They're afraid that the questions will unravel faith. They're afraid uncertainty then will start to spread. And then they're afraid we won't have the answers. And then what do we do if we don't have the answers? So we rush to fix, or we rush to correct, or we rush to defend. But here's what I know about rushing, is rushing shuts people down when it comes to doubt. People don't need immediate answers. They actually need safe space. So if someone can't bring their doubts to you, then they're going to take them somewhere else. Like I think about my daughters. My daughters growing up, if they grew up in a Christian home with a pastor, if my girls had doubts, I wanted them to know the one place you can bring a doubt is to dad. Not the pastor, but the dad. Why is that? Because I want them to bring their doubts to me so we can wrestle them out together. And some of those doubts took time. Now, I live in Tucson, Arizona. That's where our church is. That's where I live. But I've had conversations with men and women in Tucson who have said things like this, especially men. I stopped asking questions because I didn't want to look weak. Or I felt judged for doubting. Or I was told to just have more faith. Isn't that a fun one? Have more faith. I would tell you, actually, doubting, I think, is leaning into your faith. Now, all those things, they didn't help when people tell them that. What has helped someone is listening. Someone not panicking. Someone staying present. See, that's mercy. And when someone comes to you with doubt, what if you just go, okay, let's figure this out. So what does mercy for the doubter look like? Jude tells us to be merciful to those who doubt. Be merciful, not dismissive, not defensive, merciful. A lot of times people come with doubts and we get real defensive about our faith, but here's what mercy does. Mercy assumes sincerity. Mercy creates safety. Mercy invites honesty. Mercy says you can bring your questions here, and that posture opens doors for those that doubt. So why does listening need to come first? Well, here's this hard truth. Most people don't feel heard. They feel corrected. Listening doesn't mean agreeing. It just means honoring the person that's coming to you with doubt. So when you listen first, here's what happens. You lower defenses, you build trust, you create space for truth. But when you speak too soon, you shut it down. You create distance. Like you confirm all their fears. Listening is not passive. It's actually really powerful. It's actually one of the biggest things I've had to work on in my leadership and in my life is not opening my mouth to try to fix something when somebody comes with doubt, but actually listening to what their doubt is. Listening for the something behind the something. So how do you create safe conversations? Let's push down into this. Like, let's get really practical. How do you create a safe conversation with people that are doubting? First, you need to slow down. Don't rush to respond. Just slow down for a minute. Just listen. Let your ears catch up to what they're saying. And then after you slow down, ask some clarifying questions. Help them articulate what they're really asking. And here's why. Just a minute ago, I said the thing behind the thing. People come into my office all the time and they have doubts or they have questions. Usually the thing they're doubting is not the thing they're actually doubting. There's usually something behind the something in their past that happened that this doubt is easier to deal with than the thing they're dealing with. So maybe you need to listen long enough to help them articulate what they're really asking. Ask more questions than you try to give answers. The third thing I would say is validate the struggle. Like, you can acknowledge pain without affirming conclusions. Like, how hard is it to be able to say, I'm really sorry you're going through that? And be sincere. I'm really sorry you're wrestling through this. Or maybe even saying, you know what, I understand because I've had to wrestle too. But acknowledge their pain without affirming their conclusions. Here's the fourth: resist fixing. Here's what I've learned. Not every doubt, not every conversation needs an immediate solution. Sometimes you just need to listen. This happens in my house with my wife. I've had to learn to go, do you want me to listen or are you looking for me to help fix? You know what's crazy? When I ask that question, I minimize 99% of the conflict in my marriage just by that question. Imagine how much more so with those that are doubting in our life. We don't have to fix everything. Maybe we just need to listen more. And then the fifth thing is stay present. Trust builds over time. So safe conversations require patience. Don't look for the immediacy to fix the issue. Just spend time. Show up. Have safe conversations. Allow people to be heard. See, here's what not to do. Let me name a few things that shut doubters down quickly. Like, don't shame questions. When we start shaming questions, people shut down. Like, don't weaponize scripture. Here's another one Christians have been really good at, is taking scripture and using it to annihilate instead of to help them move towards Jesus. Here's another thing that we shouldn't do. Don't minimize people's pain. In your mind, you're like, yeah, but that pain's not very much. It's not maybe to you, but it is to them. And then here's another thing. Don't compare stories. Have you ever done this? You get into one-upmanship. You don't even mean to. You're trying to connect, and what they hear is, oh, well, I guess you've been through more. Or don't make it about winning. You're not trying to win an argument. You're trying to help a soul know Jesus. See, those responses push people away, but rescue requires proximity, and proximity requires trust. Let me say that again. Rescue requires proximity. Proximity requires trust. So how is it that doubt can actually strengthen our faith? Here's the paradox. Handled well, doubt can deepen faith. Actually, my doubts have led me to deeper faith than any of my shallow beliefs. So questions lead to understanding. Struggle leads to ownership. Wrestling leads to maturity. Like, faith that's never been questioned is often pretty shallow. Faith that has survived doubt is really resilient. And here's what I know about God. He's not threatened by questions. He invites them. I remember in college, I came back into the dorm late one night. We'd been studying at Steak and Shake for finals, and I came in the door at about 3 a.m, and there was a guy sitting in the lobby at a Bible college with a sketch pad writing profanities to God. He was so angry with God. And I just sat down with him. I said, man, you good? He was like, nope. And he was angry with God, angry about a lot of things. So I just sat with him in that moment for a few minutes. This is where I learned that sitting with people just helps people deal with doubt. And he said, you think God's mad with me right now? And I said, I don't. And I don't think he's threatened by your profanities or your questions. I think he's inviting you into this moment. About a day later, I ran into him on campus. He said, thanks for sitting with me and let me doubt. He said, God actually revealed himself pretty big. See, God's not threatened by those questions. He invites them. And men, I need you to hear this. You don't lose strength by admitting doubt. You gain credibility. Let me say it again. You don't lose strength by admitting doubt. You actually gain credibility with people. Your kids need to see an honest faith. Like my kids see me struggle. They see me doubt. I'm a pastor. People are like, you're not supposed to doubt. I do. I'm human. Your friends need to see real faith. Your city needs men who can hold tension without panic. Certainty without humility repels, but honesty with hope attracts. Let me say that again. Certainty without humility repels people. When you just think you have it all together, but honesty with hope is attractive. I have this friend, his name's Eddie. Eddie goes to our church now. He's been coming for a little over a year. Eddie started a ministry in our city with a national organization called Holy Smokes. He leads the chapter of Holy Smokes in Tucson. It's a cigar ministry. Now, I know some of you are like, can you say that's a ministry? It really is for him. He's got upwards of 30 guys that show up to a cigar bar either the first Friday of the month or the first Monday of the month, and they sit around with cigars and they talk about Jesus. And can I tell you, the amount of guys that have walked into that circle that don't know Jesus, that now know Jesus, is monumental because Eddie is honest with his hope. He admits he doesn't have all the answers. I've showed up to a couple of them. And the amount of unbelievable conversation that comes out of those gatherings is really honest, and it's really attractive with hope. They literally smell like smoke, and figuratively. So when you don't have the answers, what do? The biggest fear, right? Well, what if I don't have an answer? Here's something freeing. You don't need to know all the answers. Can I give you an answer that's okay to say? It's okay to say, you know what? I don't know. People ask me all the time, hey, pastor, can you answer this? And I'm like, I don't know the answer. I don't know. But you know what I do tell them? But let's find out the answer together. It's okay to say that's a hard question. It's okay to say, let's wrestle with this together. That kind of honesty builds trust. Pretending that you know the answer and giving a false answer or giving a surface level answer does not build trust. That's why people think we're hypocrites. So here's the role of community. You need other people in this. Doubt grows dangerous in isolation. But community, you know what it does? It provides perspective. Shared stories normalize struggle. Relationship sustains faith. That's why rescue is never a solo mission. We're not on a solo rescue mission. We're in an army. Like, men, you need places where questions are welcome, where faith is formed over time, where mercy leads the way. So what does this mean for the commissioning that Jude gives us? This matters for the commission because if we treat doubters like threats, we will never rescue them. If we treat doubters like people, here's what happens. Doors open. The goal is not to eliminate doubt. The goal is to walk with people through it. Mercy keeps people close enough to encounter Jesus. So let's get even more painstakingly practical. How do you listen before speaking? Let me give you a simple framework you can use. Listen for the story, not just the question. What's the story behind the question? Reflect what you hear before responding. Ask what the doubt is connected to. Honestly, most of those doubts are connected to something way back. And then when it's appropriate, share your own struggle, not to compare, but share your struggle too. And then gently point towards hope. See, it's not complicated. It's relational. And I think sometimes we want a class or we want something to tell us or apologetics or theology, which are all great. I think you need to understand apologetics. I think you need to understand theology. I think we need to start with understanding people. That people just want someone to be with them. Now, if you're doubting, if you're the doubter, I want you to hear this. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're not unwelcome. Your questions matter. Your honesty matters. Your journey matters. Jesus meets honest doubters with grace. So here's the hope. Doubt does not disqualify you. It actually invites you deeper. God is patient. God is present. God is faithful. And he often reveals himself most closely and clearly in those questions that you have. I've seen Jesus closer in my doubt than I ever have in my certainty. So here's the closing challenge for this week. If you're on a rescue mission, I want you to listen more than you speak. When someone doubts, resist the urge to fix. I want you to create space and then show mercy. Because doubt is not the enemy. Distance is. Distance is. So this smells like smoke. We're learning to go close enough to the fire to rescue. Close enough to listen, close enough to love, close enough to show mercy. Next episode, we're going to talk about snatching from the flames and what urgency actually looks like without panic. Now, if you like this podcast, I want you to do me a favor. Would you share this? Like, seriously, right now, click the share button, put it out there. Maybe you're watching on YouTube. Maybe you're listening on Spotify. Maybe you're on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're at. Would you just share this to your social media? That would mean a great deal to me. The other thing I would say is go review it. Leave us a review. That gets us in the algorithm for other people to see it. And then just so you know, this audience right here, in a couple weeks, you'll get a link. You'll get a link in the show notes to be able to pre-order the Smells Like Smoke book. We believe that this book is going to be able to help people change lives. So if you would, Smells Like Smoke community, stay present, stay merciful, and stay close to the fire. We'll see you next week.